If you're thinking about selling your home and you've got a running list of everything you're planning to fix, I want you to hit pause. A lot of sellers waste thousands of dollars fixing things that buyers simply don't care about, or worse, things buyers want to change anyway. I've been selling homes for over 20 years, and what I've learned is really simple. You don't need to fix everything to get top dollar. You just need to fix the right things. In this video, I'm breaking down the top 10 things you should not fix before selling your home, and at the end, I'll tell you exactly what you should be spending your money and your time on instead. Before we go any further, I'd like to take a minute here and ask a favor. If you find any value in my videos at all, make sure you hit that thumbs up, and if you want to stay updated on everything about how to sell your home for top dollar, please consider subscribing to the channel. The very first thing I want you to stay away from is major renovations, things like your kitchen and your bath. I know you've all heard the phrase, kitchens and bathrooms sell homes. But full remodels, it's not worth it right before a sell. Now, if you're planning to live in the home for, say, a few more years and enjoy the updates, then great. But the last thing I want you to do is do all of these upgrades to get your home ready to sell and then realizing it was a complete waste. Now, see, here's the thing. If you're 2 to 3 months from listing, doing a $40,000 to $50,000 kitchen or $25,000 bathroom remodel just doesn't make financial sense. And here's why. Most remodels only return somewhere between 50 to say 70% of their cost. And on top of that, buyers might not share your taste. They might want to rip it out anyway. In addition to that, what I've seen is a lot of sellers do these remodels prior to putting their home on the market. And when they do them, they only do them, say, half-ass, if you will. And that's because they're trying to spend the least amount of money in order to get the biggest return. And by doing that, they're often skipping steps. Oftentimes, when you would say, remove a wall to open up the kitchen, or create a bigger island, or completely rebuild the cabinets with custom cabinets, what I'm often seeing is sellers leave the wall up. They go with a smaller kitchen island. And in many cases, they just reface the cabinets instead of replacing them entirely. So what I'd rather you do is focus on maybe painting the cabinets, swapping out knobs and pulls, updating the lighting fixtures, and doing things like changing the faucets. I can provide you with a lot of examples over 20 years, but I'm going to give you a real story here. I had a client who spent about $50,000 on a kitchen remodel and maybe got about $20,000, $25,000 more in their sell price. If we had just painted and updated the hardware, the return would have been way better. But here's the thing. They did the kitchen remodel before they ever called me. So if you're in the process of potentially selling your home in the near future and you're thinking about doing some of the things that we're talking about in today's video, before you do anything, make sure you reach out to a professional in your market, have that conversation, because that agent should be able to guide you through the things that are going to get you the most bang for your buck. Now, the second thing I want to talk about is replacing all of the flooring. If you've heard me talk before, I tell you all the time, paint and flooring sells homes. But here's the reality. If your flooring is dated but functional, I want you to leave it. Many buyers out there expect to make some changes. In fact, I just sold a home here in Cypress, California a couple of months ago. And the sellers, well, they had green carpet in that house. And I know what many of you were saying, well, you should have probably replaced it. But here's the thing, we didn't replace it because we knew replacing that carpet wasn't really going to add to the value of that home because there were so many other things in that property that needed to be fixed anyway. Had we just replaced the flooring, the buyers were likely going to rip it out anyway. And when it came to the brass tacks at the end of the day, we ended up selling that home for about $100,000 over the asking price. So whether we had spent another $5 to $10 grand replacing that floor would have made absolutely no difference. But you're probably asking, well, when does it actually make sense? Well, when it's old, when it's stained, you need to replace it. Strong pet odor, replace it. But don't go ripping out, say, a decent LVP or engineered hardwood because it's not trending. Now, in the case that the home has, say, hardwood floors in it, but they're dull, maybe consider refinishing them. In fact, I had one seller that I worked with years ago who wanted to replace all of their 4-year-old flooring before listing their house. But here's the thing, we skipped it. We added rugs, we focused on cleaning and decluttering. And guess what? The buyer ended up paying full asking price on that home and ended up replacing the flooring after the close of escrow. Now, the third thing I want you to completely avoid fixing, and that's any sort of driveway and walkway cracks. Small cracks in concrete, well, that's totally normal. In fact, when I'm walking buyers around property all of the time, one of the things that we'll actually talk about are those small hairline cracks that are in the patios, oftentimes in garage flooring, sometimes in the sidewalk leading up to the property. And the reason I talk about them with buyers is because I want buyers to know that that has nothing to do with the foundation of the home. And that's because those areas of concrete are often poured a lot thinner and they're more prone to cracking, especially as those areas settle over time. And if that wasn't enough, replacing or repouring walkways or driveways or sidewalks or whatever, well, it's expensive and you're not going to get that money back unless it's some sort of huge tripping hazard, in which case you might consider replacing it. But again, make sure you're running it by your agent. A simple fix is to power wash the surface, pull weeds from the cracks, or potentially add gravel or mulch where needed. And in the case that you have things like flagstone or pavers that are uneven, it's cheap to re-level. In fact, I just did this in my backyard. I had a neighbor's tree root coming under my patio that was causing all of my pavers to be uneven. And so I found a guy that was doing work on another house in my neighborhood, had him come by and take a look at it and ask him what it would cost him to fix it while he was already here. And that's kind of a bonus tip for you, if you will. If there's people working in your neighborhood doing something that you're going to consider doing, it's really easy to walk over, have them come take a look at your project, and then many times they'll give you a deal because they're already in the area. Now, the fourth thing I want you to stay away from is any sort of full roof replacement. An old roof doesn't mean a bad roof, and it doesn't mean you need a new roof. If there are no current leaks on your roof, I don't want you to replace it. Now, buyers might prefer a different style roof or want to negotiate it themselves, but what I'd rather you do instead is get 2 to 3 roofing estimates and share those with any potential buyers that might have an issue with that roof. I recently sold a home about 4 months ago where the roof looked older. It actually looked like it needed to be replaced. In fact, it looked like it needed to be replaced when my client originally bought the home about 3 years ago. And here's the thing, it wasn't leaking. And that roof still had about 5 years left on the original estimated 25-year life. And if I'm being honest, it did present some issues early in the process because some of the buyers that were looking at that roof kept mentioning the roof, kept mentioning how it needed to be replaced. So what we did is we went out and had a roofer inspect that roof. In fact, we had a couple of different people do it so that any time a buyer brought that roof up, we actually handed them the certification from the roofer showing that the roof was still in good shape. On top of that, showing what it was going to cost to replace it. Now with that, one of the buyers did come in asking for a $30,000 credit for the roof. But because we had estimates for a lot less to replace that roof, we ended up settling at about $13,000 and ended up saving the deal. And that's because we were able to show the buyers that the roof wasn't leaking. It still had a couple of years remaining on it. Therefore, the buyer was willing to take quite a bit less than the original cost to replace that roof just to get the deal closed. So in this example, it ended up saving my client around $12,000 by not replacing that roof. Now, the next thing I want you to avoid replacing is the front door. I know you've heard that curb appeal is everything, but the reality is a new front door is costly and it's usually unnecessary. Instead, what I'd rather you do is paint it a modern color. Add a new doormat, make sure you clean the porch, update your lighting, because that's the very first thing that buyers see when they walk to your house. In fact, as an agent, when I'm fiddling with the lockbox trying to get into the property, buyers are looking around your front porch. So remember, first impressions matter, but buyers aren't choosing your house based on the door style. Now, if you are someone considering selling your home, as I've mentioned several times, make sure you talk to a real estate agent before you do any fixes, replacements, repairs, remodeling on your home. Now, if you don't know where to start, you need a real estate agent that works the way I do. I've created a vetted list of agents just like myself. I've been doing this over 20 years. So if you want somebody who works just like me, make sure you check that link in the description. Now, the next thing I want you to stay away from replacing is your window coverings. Unless your window coverings are broken or filthy, don't replace them. And the reason is most buyers plan to install their own anyway. What I'd rather you do is actually remove dated blinds or curtains, patch the holes, and just let in the natural light. And that's because light sells homes. Heavy drapes, they kill it. One of the very first things I did when we bought the property that we moved in right now is we removed the plantation shutters on the front of the house. And that's because it was killing a lot of the natural light coming into the home. Now, the seller of the property, the guy that we bought the home for, spent a lot of money on those blinds. And if I'm being honest, they looked really nice at night, but during the day, it killed all the natural light. Now, instead of going out and replacing it with something that would let light in, instead we just removed it entirely. And by doing that, it looked a lot more open, which made the space feel bigger and a lot lighter. Now, the seventh thing I want you to stay away from when getting your home ready for sale is any sort of big landscaping projects. Don't go out and build a fire pit or outdoor kitchen for someone else. Landscaping return on investment is very, very low unless it's curb appeal focused. So mow the lawn, edge and mulch the beds, trim trees and bushes, power wash paths. Things like cheap mulch and a Saturday of cleanup can add thousands of dollars in perceived value. Now, the next one is something I've heard recently, and that's replacing fireplaces. Why would anybody want to replace their fireplaces? Yes, I realize they're outdated, but what I want you to do is leave it. In some areas, you can't even install new ones, and buyers may prefer the original. What I'd rather you do is make sure it's clean. Confirm that it works, get a chimney sweep, because you have to remember when you're selling a house, you're selling functionality and potential, not perfection. Now, the ninth thing I want you to stay away from is probably the most important on this list in my opinion, and that's I don't want you to replace just one bathroom faucet if it doesn't match. Don't patch a wall in one color. Basically, partial fixes that stand out, I want you to stay away from them. And that's because mismatched finishes can often signal that you cut corners. Either fix it all or leave it. That's one reason I want you to stay away from kitchen and bathroom remodels entirely. And that's because oftentimes when I see people do them, they're just trying to do it to create value in their home and oftentimes cutting corners. And that's because buyers want to feel like the home is move-in ready, not just cobbled together with leftover parts. So rather than just replace a fixture here and there or an outlet here and there, either do them all or do none. Now, you've probably heard the phrase when it comes to buying a home that you want to buy the worst house in the best area. So what I want you to do is stay away from over-improving for the neighborhood. If your home is the best on the block by a mile, that's a problem, which means you shouldn't be adding smart home features, luxury appliances, adding major square footage if your neighborhood comps don't support it. What I'd rather you do is look at the top 3 to 5 sales in your area, then aim to match, not exceed those homes. And that's one reason that I recommend talking to a real estate agent early in the process, because they can be a very good guide for what you should be focusing on and what you should be avoiding. But with that, I think there's a couple of different things that you can do that cost very little money out of your pocket that can add a lot of value to your bottom line. And the very first one is declutter. Remember, less is more. Make sure you pack early, thin out closets, clear countertops, pack all those tchotchkes away in a box and put them in the garage. On top of that, make sure you do a deep clean to that property. Hire a professional if you can, because you want to do the floors, the baseboards, the windows, the air vents, the top of the ceiling fans where all of that dust has been sitting and you've been talking about getting it for the last 6 months. Well, that needs to be cleaned. In addition to that, you should paint. Fresh neutral paint makes everything feel new, and it's one of the least expensive things you can do that adds the most value to your home. Now with that, if you're somebody out there who's not really that clean, maybe you have pets, I also want you to focus on deodorizing. And that's because smells are important. And guess what? Buyers, they smell everything. I feel like I have a pretty good nose. I mean, I have a pretty big one, but I feel like I have a pretty good one as well. And I often can walk in properties and smell things. But what I'll tell you is buyers often smell things that I can't even smell, which means you need it as neutral as possible. And on top of that, I want you to consider staging your home. Most professional real estate agents will probably tell you you need to stage your home unless it's done really well to start. I often walk in properties that have been nicely upgraded, nicely remodeled. They're staged perfectly. And I tell them, hey, you don't need to do anything. But then I often walk into properties that are vacant or people have been living there a long time. They don't have a lot of furniture. My recommendation is to stage that property. It doesn't have to be fancy. It just needs to be clean, simple, and inviting. And the things I just talked about, they don't cost much, but here's the reality. They boost emotional appeal and perceived value. Now, if you're getting ready to sell and you're not sure what to fix or what to leave alone, shoot me a message, drop me a comment. I've helped hundreds of sellers walk this path, and I'd be more than happy to help you too. And while you're at it, don't forget to subscribe for more real estate advice that actually helps. Thanks for watching. See you next time.